What's up, guys? Today we're talking about learning to run properly. I'm gonna give you some really helpful tips on how to fix your head position and your hip position, which is really gonna help you keep this whole running thing all together. Look, guys, I can't overemphasize the importance of your head position while you run and really as you function as a human being. It's so important. It's something we don't necessarily always think about. We think about posture and alignment this way, but we don't always think about what our head does when we run. And if you think about it, sometimes we run, we get tired, our head starts to shake back and forth. Sometimes you see runners, their head does this. And if you don't think this is a big deal, I once worked with a runner who had a pinched nerve and a potential herniated disc in her cervical spine due to repeat stress of training so much, of moving her neck this way. So it's a problem. The other thing that affects is that my head, lo and behold, is attached to the rest of my spine. And when I have a change in head position, a lot of times what happens is a deflection through the rest of the spine. So if I'm talking about better hip position, which I'll get to in a second, more aligned spinal mechanics, which is gonna be better running mechanics, I can't have that conversation without talking about your noggin. Now, the biggest thing we have to deal with is stuff we do with running, what we do with our life, with our head, and maybe some tests we can do with some strength things. So I'm gonna kind of give you an example for each of these things. But first, let's figure out what our alignment is. So this is what I want you to go ahead and do. You're gonna make a little tripod with your fingers. You've got your thumb and your middle finger is gonna be the base. Your index finger is gonna be the top. I want you to put your thumb and middle finger right on your collarbone. Your index finger, boom, is gonna go ahead and be right here. And all of a sudden, this is a nice aligned head position. Once I have that, I know where my nice neutral head is, and that's all I need to have for that. A lot of times you'll notice that when I start to run, my head starts to shift or shake. Strength, you're gonna see your head change in like a push-up. And then into life, if you have your phone out, what do you look like? Are you up here or are you like this? Am I typing here or is my head nice and neutral? Those are the things that we wanna look at for sure. So we have our little tripod. This is where I want my head to be. Now I'm gonna challenge this in different spots. So let's take this to a plank and a push-up. And the reason why I care about this strength stuff is because this reveals who you are as a mover, as an athlete. If you start to see some faults in someone's general movements, you better believe those faults are gonna show up in the specific activities they like to do, like running. So when I start here, a plank and say a push-up, one of the most common things I see when athletes start to go down to the ground is that they start to jut and turtle their head to the ground because it feels like, well, I can only go so far with my legs or my arms, but if I jut my head down, it feels like I'm further down than I am. What I want to be able to do, mostly just an awareness thing, hey, can I keep this chin nice and neutral? Can I get in this push-up position? Head is back, head is chill, is very relaxed. Can I go down? Can I check that chin? It's nice and neutral. Can I come back just from the knees just a few times if that's not bad? And then all of a sudden, can I try this whole thing from here? The biggest thing with this is really gonna be that awareness piece. But if you're that person who sees crazy head movements when you do things like push-ups or burpees or any other strength movement in the gym, stuff that we believe in that all runners should do, that's a flag that maybe your head position is off elsewhere. So that's kind of the test number one. The second test is gonna be this. It's gonna have more to do with your posture when you're running or when you're working and living with the rest of your life. You know, every once in a while, every hour, I want you to go ahead and just use this and check your chin. Are you on your phone or on your computer? Are you nice and upright? Or are you here? Is that chin starting to jut forward? Because here's the deal. I could work on my head position 10, 15 minutes a day, and that could be really productive work there. But all of a sudden, for the 8 hours or more that I'm at work, I lapse into grossness. This 8 hours is gonna trump the 15. It is every single time. So treat your little drills as a way to kind of practice and reinforce this good movement, but then I need to carry it through the rest of my day. I can't reinforce that enough. I have to think about being more aware. Another challenge our friend Dr. Kelly Starrett of Mobility Watt talks about: when you have your phone, don't look at it down here, bring your phone up to your head. So it looks a little crazy when you've got something like this, but my head position is so much better here than it is here. So that's my life little test and my life tip. And finally, when I'm running, have your friend watch you, videotape yourself, check not only when you're doing your easy runs, but when you're doing tempo runs, or what happens really when you're tired at the end. Are you starting to shake back and forth? Are you here? Are there some things you can do to get a little taller? Shake out your shoulders, get that head more neutral. It's big. Obviously, a lot of these things are more awareness tips, but if you bring awareness here, you can bring a lot of change. If the head's a lot more calm, it's really gonna pay dividends in your running. Okay, so the second thing we're gonna talk about are fixing your hips. And once again, I'm gonna talk about how this affects your running. I'm gonna talk about a little truth tell you can test in your strength practice, and then as well as just your general life. Now, when we talk about setting up our hips, we're once again gonna borrow a little hip position from our friend Dr. Kelly Starrett of Mobility WOD. And what we wanna figure out is what's aligned, what's proper, how do I figure out that proper amount of anterior, posterior pelvic tilt, alignment and all that. And the simple way we're gonna do this, we're gonna line our feet up so they're straight underneath us. We are going to very lightly screw our feet into the ground. We're gonna stand nice and tall so we have a nice straight line from our ears, shoulders, hips, knees to our ankles. And the most important thing, we're gonna squeeze our butt a little bit. And when I kind of squeeze my butt, screw my feet into the ground, what I've done is created not only something that's optimal from an alignment standpoint, but from a tension standpoint where everything is strong and connected. I could bring this to one leg and things are good. Notice where I'm not at. I'm not here, right? Where do we spend most of our day if you're waiting in line at groceries, you're out at a concert, or you're just tired walking around through the day? A lot of times we spend so much time shifted over to one side. And once again, I could practice my running with good alignment for that 15 minutes, but then if I spend the rest of my day here accumulating these reps, this is really what I'm telling my body I want it to do. And guess what? It's gonna default to kind of similar ugly positions when we run. Most commonly, when we run, we lose our ability to stay upright. We tend to arch this low back. And this low back arches excessively, and once I'm here, I actually can't stabilize my hips anymore, and then I'm open to hip collapse. If you've ever seen those photos where all of a sudden you see like your knees touching together when you run, that is that hip collapse position. If you're that person who actually gets those like scuff marks on their calves, you've successfully managed to kick yourself while you run. This kicking self motion is not the most efficient way to run well, right? We're obviously running into ourselves to a certain degree, because when my hips are aligned, my leg swings, it doesn't kick myself, but when I start to collapse, all of a sudden I start to get this little motion there. That's a little telltale sign. So when we think about being tall, we want to set ourselves up, screw our feet into the ground. We've created this position, and all of a sudden we've got a position of strength to be strong. For strength, once again, we can test this in our push-up the same way we tested our head position. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna get into the top of this plank. And the thing that I'm gonna think about is, hey, how do I get the same position I got standing up here? Well, I'm gonna extend my legs as much as I can. I'm gonna flex my quads. I'm gonna squeeze my butt tight, almost like I'm squeezing something right in between my butt cheeks. I wanna get that as tight as possible, and I wanna maintain that tension all the way. Because if I don't, and I'm gonna go back to the ground, this is a little soft, all of a sudden, I have a little crack in the seam and this becomes a little unsteady. So once again, as a strength coach, the biggest thing I see is people being a little soft in the midline, their butt is not squeezed in that plank and that push-up, and all of a sudden when they start to do a push-up, all of a sudden their shoulders start to move before their hips stay high, and when they get really tired, the back starts to arch. So if you're that person who starts to have those problems, well, if I can't do this in a plank and a push-up, how am I gonna be able to do this when things get much more complex? I'm on one leg and my legs are moving, say, in a running motion. That's gonna be that little thing right there. Finally, for our hip position when we're running, what we actually wanna think about is, well, as we run, pushing our hips forward a little bit. And this pushing of our hips forward a little bit is just gonna keep our hips aligned underneath us where we are, because I can't keep my butt squeezed all the way when I run. It's gonna be too stiff. But just by keeping my hips underneath me, that's gonna be the key thing. So a lot of times I like to give the analogy, imagine someone's got a lasso around your hips, you're letting your hips lead the way a little bit. Can you overdo this drill? Can all of a sudden you go here? Yes, you can. So we don't want to go too far, right? It's sort of a game of subtlety when it comes to running and everything else. We just want a little bit of a toe. That's going to be my knowledge for running. If I'm that person who comes back and has said they have those scuff marks or they see that sort of hip collapse, I'm really going to focus on maintaining that and building and improving that. Other things I can do to improve would just be a little single leg balance, making sure that my hips don't collapse this way, they're up nice and tall, everything's nice and aligned. That's a perfect way to bring some awareness there. And finally, with my just life, I just want to go back to that good posture, because if I can't sit and stand very well, I'm not going to be able to maintain good posture for my run. So I'm tall, we did that little head position to reinforce that. I squeeze my butt, I've got both things, I'm pretty aligned. And if I'm sitting, I'm typing, I'm looking at my phone here. As I said, I'm seated, I'm like this, I'm making sure that I'm not defaulting to here. And seriously guys, if you can work on these two things, if you can reinforce it in your running, you can reinforce it in your strength training with simple things like push-ups, you can reinforce it in your life, just how you sit and stand throughout your day, it is gonna make huge differences. I cannot overestimate how big these differences are going to be. Go forth and conquer, try these things, you're gonna make and you're gonna love them. Guys, we have one more thing for you. Thanks again for watching this Learn to Run Properly video. If you liked it, go ahead and let us know. Hit that like button down below. If you have any comments or questions on that head and hip position stuff we talked about, hit us up in the comments. Definitely subscribe to our channel if you're not already. We are just pumping out material all the time on running injuries, on strength training, on injury prevention, on how to run better, run workouts, tips for your next marathon. We got that all in there, so definitely subscribe there. And finally, we have a 2-week quick start running program giving you 2 weeks of run drills, strength workouts, run workouts, injury prevention exercises you can do at home. It makes a huge difference. All you need to do to get it is to click this link in this video or hit the link in the description down below if you happen to be on a mobile device. Either way, that's going to take you to a page. Once you're there, all you need to do is enter your name and your email, and I'll be able to personally send you your 2-week quick start program. Once again, guys, thanks for watching.